It's my delight, as usual, to welcome you to the continuation of the discourse on your news and current affairs program, coming to you live from our studios right here in Lagos on the ITV network. I am Joshua Okata. The state of the nation is our focus today, and of course that brings us to the war of words, as it were, by the executive governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, against the person of the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Gregory Obi. You would recall that Peter Obi was on an invitation to Johns Hopkins University in the United States a few days back to give address on certain issues, critical issues that has to do with politics and of course change in Nigeria. 3 countries and their economies were put on a scale with Nigeria inclusive, and I'm talking about Vietnam, Indonesia, Nigeria as well, and of course Indonesia, dating far back as 1990, and that brings us to about 35 years of a democracy that has been fledgling across these countries. What has been the situation thus far? Well, Babajide Sanwo-Olu felt such kind of remarks were a bit demarketing, especially looking at it from Nigeria as a country, and that didn't sit well with him. But of course, some sections of Nigeria, especially Nigerians, felt that such remark by the executive governor, I'm talking about Babajide Sanwo-Olu, was a direct attack on the person of Peter Obi rather than addressing issues that were put on the front burner. What's your take on this? Well, while I leave you to share your thoughts with me, I'm also being joined by Mr. Matthew Oluko. He is a statistician by profession, and of course, he is a social affairs analyst. Good morning, Mr. Matthew, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Now, let's look at this issue from an unbiased point of view. With a sound mind, 3 nations were put on a scale with Nigeria inclusive, and of course, these nations are China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Nigeria. We're looking at a period of 35 years, dating far back as at 1990. Now, let me bring to you, this economy had their various challenges at the time. But of course, what is their HDI? Because of course, the parameters used in judging these nations were on Human Development Index, which is the HDI. As at 1990, the per capita for China was about $556. China, of course, had its own 317, Indonesia had about $578, and Vietnam had about $99. Today, the reverse seems the case, especially looking at it from what China has right about now. China has about 1,300. Nigeria has about $5,000. Vietnam has 4,400. As a statistician, what's your take as regards this when it comes to the per capita?
I think these figures speak for themselves, and even if you look at the controversy, would I call it controversy, this is a disagreement between the Lagos State Governor and Peter Obi himself, that does not deny the fact, because the records are there. I think one thing is certain, the authorities, the government should, for me, this should be an avenue to even trigger them to do more in terms of solving the problem. And the Nigerian leaders or Nigerian government personalities are very quick to react each time they see any disparaging remark against Nigeria from outside the country. It's not unexpected anyway, because they are like the symbol of the country. But if those things exist, denial do not solve the problem. And somehow, I have a feeling that when such issues come up, it is an avenue to address whatever is not being addressed in Nigerian economy. Because remember that the leader of Conservative Party in United Kingdom, talking about Kemi Badenoch, the other time raised issue about Nigerian security agencies, particularly the police, her experience, though she was vilified. But the Nigerian police, particularly the Inspector General of Police, rose to the occasion to even ask the men in the field to stop searching the phone numbers of Nigerians, particularly the youths. So in as much as, however I look at it, that her statement triggered the government, or rather the police, to take action to solve part of the problem. Remember that the other time we had a situation where someone like Davido in a podcast in United States of America talk about Nigeria. We all know how he was vilified. So the point is, whether you vilify somebody raising an issue, if those things are statement of fact, I think it needs to be addressed. Though I've seen the governor of Lagos State challenging Obi himself, that he left the state poorer I'm talking about Obi as a governor of Anambra State. Then I think the conversation should even go deeper than that. Because if we are seeing an Obi who is bringing the issue of Nigeria at the global level, and somebody who knows his activities as a governor has come out to challenge him that you did not do well as a governor, and maybe he's bringing that, I think Obi himself should come out to tell us whether he actually left Anambra State poorer than he met it. So for me, the conversation is heady because one, it will challenge the authorities to do better for the people.
All right, now let's stay a little bit on the reaction of the governor. Like you said, it is always the case, when someone of the opposition, regardless of it being Peter Obi this time, making a statement, we're always seeing a triggered reaction, sometimes not even addressing issues, but attacking the personality of the person who actually made that statement. Now, can we look critically on the message rather than the messenger?
Okay.
Just a moment. Seeing the fact that what Jide Sanwo-Olu said was more like a reactionary, situation, whereas not attacking or addressing the issue. You said this person is always seizing opportunities to demarcate the country, as it were, throwing the country under the bus. Now, how does the issue of a country that was well-to-do at the time, given the analysis painted earlier, now dwindling, rather than you addressing issues as to speaking to the facts, what your government, as it were, is doing currently to address those issues, you are directly attacking the personality of the individual. What do you speak of the person of Babajide Sanwo-Olu as a governor of Lagos State?
Okay, what I said earlier on, if an Obi was a governor of Anambra State for 8 years, and from what the governor of Lagos State have said, that he left the state poorer than he met it, I expect an Obi to come up with the statistics if it's not true. And if it's true, it goes to show that the failure of leadership of Nigeria is a collective one. Because both the government at the state level, at the federal level, since this nascent democracy in 1999 is culpable of the current situation. But again, what Obi have said is a statement of facts. That denying it does not solve the problem. That's why I initially said that it's healthy that we're having this conversation. Because in a way, it will help to trigger the authorities to solve the problem. I cited the issue of IG of police, giving an order to men in the field to stop searching the phone number, the phone of Nigerian youths, as a consequence of the statement that came from the leader of Conservative Party in United Kingdom, talking about Kemi Badenoch. So, if it will take someone to go to the global stage to embarrass Nigeria, for Nigerian government to do the needful, maybe that is the path to follow.
All right, now let's look at the poverty situation of the country, because Babajide Sanwo-Olu attacked the personality of Peter Obi, accusing him of increasing the poverty situation in his state while he was governor of Anambra State. Now, the facts are here before us. As at 1990, Nigeria was living with 50 million poor people. We have China, 750 million people. Then we have Vietnam having a poor, people of 60 million. And we're having Indonesia, 85 million. That was in 1990. Today, Nigeria has more poor people than these three countries. What's your take on that?
My take is that Nigeria have not done well, and that Nigeria should strive to solve the problem. And my take again is that if the challenge, or rather the position of the Lagos State governor is not correct with respect to how Obi managed Anambra State, I think an Obi should come up to challenge that. Because what I'm saying it is, the issue of leadership in Nigeria has to do with the three tiers of government. When you see success, the three tiers of government shares the applaud, or rather the yes. But when you see failure, the three tiers of government should be ready to share it as well. In the same vein, if you look at the national democracy since 1990 date, of course, an Obi ruled Anambra State for 8 years. The current president ruled Lagos for 8 years. The current governor, Sanwo-Olu, is having his second term as a governor. When he completes that, it will be another 8 years. So when you are looking at how to apportion blame for failure of leadership, all the politicians, all the personalities who have occupied the position of governorship and the president have their own level of share. That is why I'm saying that I'm trying to be objective. That if the governor of Lagos State have accused Obi that he left Anambra poorer than he met it, I expect an Obi to come out with figures to say, no, you are not correct. I think it's a healthy conversation.
Now, let's look at the issue of accusing Peter Obi of not building a single school or a standalone hospital for the period of 8 years of his tenure. Now, on record, it is available and verifiable that Peter Obi was, given an award for the best performing governor in 2013, which also got him a sum of $1 million grant for tackling or eradicating polio in the whole of Southeast as a governor. Now, what is your take as regards he using that 1 million naira grant added to the 120 million that would be used to be able to build 10 maternities and, of course, teaching hospitals for medical students? What's your take on that?
Let me quickly say that I'm not the spokesperson of Obi, and the point here is, I'm not unaware that Obi has history of cutting down cost of governance. I think that I can always say. Looking at his performance I may not have the data or statistics, and not his spokesperson. But the point is, if someone is maintaining a position with respect to his time as governor of the state, I think it behoves on him to come up with the actual position if he feel the position of Lagos State governor is not right. But I'm not saying Obi is not, like I just said earlier on. I've seen so many areas where I feel he have good quality when it comes to leadership. Because if you look at Nigeria as a country, you agree with me that bulk of our problem is wastage. And I think Obi is a prudent manager of resources. However, if there's accusation against him while as a governor in terms of making the state poorer, I think he should come forward and explain to Nigerians.
All right, we'll be going for a short break, but when we return, definitely we'll be taking the discussion to the front line. Please, don't go nowhere. Thank you so much for joining us, and of course, it's still your program, TMI, coming to you live from our Lagos Network studios on the ITV network. We've been extraying the various war of words by these two personalities, the governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Gregory Obi. We're looking at these issues, critical issues, from a very unbiased and, of course, objective point of view. And I have here with me my guest, Mr. Matthew, who has been giving us his perspective on these issues. Now, let me take your submission on the issue of accountability and transparency. Before long, we heard about a statement by Aliko Dangote at a time when the refinery of his was, bought at somewhere in Lagos, where a sum of $100 million was invested in the Lagos State land, especially when it comes to acquisition of the land. And no one, until when that revelation came to being, that such money actually came into the Lagos State government. And here is also Peter Obi on the other side, talking extensively about accountability and transparency. What is your take as regards this, looking at it from both perspectives?
Let me say that on the issue of the amount the Dangote refinery may have paid to acquire the land, nobody is accusing, or rather have accused Lagos State government of misappropriation of funds in any way. And as such, nobody can say maybe money is misappropriated. We understand that as a government, there are different ways of getting money, getting fund, and I think that is one of the ways. Except otherwise, somebody is coming up to say, yes, XYZ have been misappropriated. I don't think somebody can just wake up and instigate any issue of maybe financial malfeasance against anyone. Then looking at the issue of prudence, I've said it here earlier on, that I see Obi as someone that have good history of resources management. Of course, we have seen evidence as a governor of Anambra State, how he refused to even allow the president who visited him at the time to spend heavily from the state coffer, how he have to leave his own residence and allow the president to use it, and perhaps he relocated to another place just for the sake of making sure that money is not wasted. So I think that goes for him. There's no argument about that. But holistically speaking, Nigeria as a country have history of perhaps corruption. That is true. And whether we pretend about it, that does not solve the problem. But I think as a people that we should strive to see how we solve, especially the issue that has to do with corruption.
Peter Obi, in his statement at Hopkins University, Johns Hopkins University in the US, said something about growth of an economy. It said that is solely the responsibility of the political leader. As a country, what would you say that we have not done well in the last 35 years that we need to do better?
I think what we may not have done well has to do with in the area of diversification of the economy. Currently, even if you say we're exporting products from other areas like agriculture, like maybe manufacturing, is insignificant to give us the much needed efforts from that angle. So I think what we may not have done well is diversification, because if you understand, when Nigeria started as a country, our Ministry of Economy was agriculture, and you understand that the economy was very good then, but as soon as oil was discovered, all attention shifted away from agriculture and the whole attention was given to crude. Currently, crude is the Ministry of Economy, but for you to have a sustainable economy, you need to diversify. Well, we need to work on our production sector, our solid mineral, and another critical area is we need to have a sustainable power supply. Because if you are going into industrialization, you must make sure that you have sustainable power supply to drive down the cost of production. So I think if you ask me, one, we need to industrialize, and to do that, we need to have sustainable power supply that we have not been able to do. And consider the chunk of money that have gone into power since the inception of this national democracy in 1999 to date, I think the people who have been managing the country have to look at what they are doing, and of course, Nigerians are not satisfied with the way they have managed it in that regard. Then, like I mentioned earlier on, agriculture is a major area that we need to diversify into.
Yes, while talking about diversification, it has been one of the mantra that has been identified by the person of Peter Obi. But what is your take as regards having persons who are empathetic, persons who are, competent and having the capacity to drive the economy? Has Africa, and by extension Nigeria in this case, done well in this regard?
They may not have done well to the level where they'll bring succor to the people. And you see, particularly in Nigeria, if I should use Nigeria as a point of reference, people, particularly the politicians, they are there for their pecuniary interests. I must tell you that a good number of them, they are not patriotic. They are just there for what they will get. And if that is a driving force of anybody, you see that corruption will strive. And at the end of the day, the money that is meant for the general good of the people will not be used for that purpose. And I think that is why we are where we are.
Now look at the fact that a country that is bleeding, Nigerians expect that the government of the day should be able to cut down on their expenditures, especially with consumption. Now, we have a government that buys utility vehicles for legislatures, which ordinarily shouldn't be heard of. Now, looking at an Obi while he was in government, he bought utility vehicles from within the country, and you know what that means. The money stays in Nigeria, job employment is guaranteed, and of course, the industry at large booms. But an economy where a sitting government buys utility vehicles from outside the shores of country, and that speaks to capital flight. How does that show empathy when it comes to the rising inflation and, of course, the unemployment rate that it will cause at the end of the day?
I honestly take exception to that, because whether we like it or not, if you want the economy to grow, you must patronize Nigerian products. That is the point. Just like you mentioned, Innocent Motor is an indigenous automobile that if we are serious people at the level of the government, at the level of individuals, of course the government by now should have been making policies to encourage people to buy that from Innocent Motor. Whether by way of imposing heavy tariff on imported vehicle that want to compete with Innocent, I think that is not out of place. The government should do that. It's not just on the area of automobile, almost every area of human endeavor, there should be policies to encourage local production and patronage on local production.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthew Oluko, for your time. We really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
That was Mr. Matthew Oluko, a statistician and, of course, a social affairs analyst. Well, that's our offering right here from our Lagos Network studios.